a moment to give their take on what happened at that session. And then after that is over and you've been kind of filled with the update, then we will just do questions. And we have a mic up here, and you can just come up and ask any question. I mean, well, not any question, but any question related to like state politics and law. When I was first elected state party chair, it was now about 7 months ago, really. What I thought we needed to do was look at something we could do quickly to start winning, to help conservatives and common sense people start winning and build some momentum coming into this big election year. And last year, of course, was an odd-numbered year, and an odd-numbered year in our state, we do local elections. So most of the elections last year were city councils and mayors and school boards. And we decided to focus the state party's efforts on those school board races. We picked about 36 races around the state that were in not just any district, but in districts that we were targeting, that were kind of districts where we want to win, where we had the chance maybe to move a school board either from the left to the middle or from the middle to the right. And so we picked these 36 school board races all around the state, geographically spread around. Around here, what did we look at? We looked at Meade and we looked at Central Valley. Those were the two races that we helped candidates in. And we asked, it was funny, we went to these 36 candidates who we had identified from their voting history and their actions and things they've been involved in, that they were conservatives. Because the school board races are, of course, nonpartisan races. You don't have to say what party you're in. We went to each of them and offered them help in their campaigns, and 35 of them said sure. Only one fellow said he didn't want to be associated with the Republican Party. So we went to the gal who was running against him in that race, and we offered to help her, and she said yes. We didn't really come with a big agenda. We just offered to help whatever the 36 candidates needed. Some of them, almost all of them wanted help with fundraising, and we didn't write them a check, but we did help them find contributors, find potential donors for their campaigns based on people who contributed to political campaigns in the past in their area, and we helped them with kind of template letters to send for asking for contributions, and then talking points. And some of it was we would just coach them up. I mean, give them encouragement and some confidence to make those phone calls, which when you're starting out in politics, it's really tough to do. You have to call people and ask them to give you money for your campaign. And so we helped them do that. In some of the cases, they asked for help with basically like talking points. They wanted help. They weren't sure how to articulate what they would do if they got elected to the school board. So we helped them with that. In some cases, it was real simple. They wanted help with like designing a yard sign. So we even did that in some cases. It was whatever they needed. And what we got out of it as a state party is we helped all 36 of those candidates identify conservative voters in their area, in their school district, and communicate with them, those voters, to make sure that they remembered to vote, and gave them ways to make sure they handed their ballot. In some cases, the state party provided a box, like a mailbox, at a trusted location, like a church, like here. I mean, it could be in this space, or a gun shop, or other places like that. In some cases, we would actually send canvassers out, doorbellers, knock on the door, and actually offer to pick up the ballot and take it to the county auditor for them. And we tested different approaches to doing this, and really helped turn out the vote in these districts. Now that process of communicating with voters, reminding them to vote, in some cases going and getting their ballot and delivering it, or giving them a box where they can put it at a church or a place like that, that's called ballot harvesting. And it's controversial. In some states, it's illegal. In this state, it is not illegal. In Washington state, ballot harvesting is entirely legal. and the other guys have been doing it for quite a while. Republicans have been hesitant to ballot harvest. They considered it for a long time kind of a manipulation and not a good thing. Well, I believe it's a good and necessary thing. It's a way to win elections in this state. And we tested the tactics, the details, the nuts and bolts of how to ballot harvest in those school board races. And the good news from all that is, of the 36 school board races where we helped the candidate, 32 of those candidates got elected to school boards. That was a very good number. And from that, we've been able to refine in a good way how we think we can help get out the vote, how we can help ballot harvest in races all around the state. That was the first thing we did. The second thing we did was something that really I've been working on even before I was elected state party chair.
Just hold it closer.
Yeah, can you hear it all right? I pulled it away too far. Is we've been working on these initiatives to the legislature. You probably know them, the 6 initiatives. These were initiatives to the legislature that were designed to fix some bad law and bad policy that Olympia had passed in the last few years. I'll review them real quick. The 6 were restoring police pursuit of criminals and criminal suspects, creating a Washington Parents' Bill of Rights that's largely about information and most effectively says that information about a minor child, what they're experiencing at school or at doctor's office or at a therapist's office, cannot be withheld from custodial parents. And that initiative also includes some key language. It puts into law this statement: parents are the primary stakeholders in the upbringing of their children. Those were 2 of the 6. Then the 4 others of the 6 were all basically fiscal tax reforms. One was a restatement of something people think's already law but isn't. There will be no state income tax in Washington based on personal income. No income tax. The next one, the 4th one, was a repeal of the Climate Commitment Act, a repeal of the cap and trade tax. Yes, we could go ahead and clap. That's one a lot of people like. The 5th was a repeal of the capital gains tax, which is, in most of the world, is considered a form of an income tax. But in our state, the state Supreme Court has said that it is an excise tax. An excise tax is a tax on a transaction. And what this initiative says is you can call it an income tax, you can call it an excise tax, you can call it a Moscow duck. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's repealed. And then the 6th and final one, which a lot of people care a lot about, is it makes optional. It allows you to opt out of the state payroll tax that funds the so-called long-term care benefit program. Now, some people will say, well, opting out effectively repeals that program. I don't agree. The option to opt out puts pressure on that program, which right now stinks. It's a bad deal. The benefit is not very good, and there are all these caveats on it. If you retire to Arizona, you don't get anything. If you have any interruption in your work years, you don't get it. It's a bad deal. The opt-out puts pressure on it, and it can improve. I mean, the people who support that program can make it better so that people will want to be part of it. And if they can't do that, then yeah, it repeals it. So, I mean, then it deserves to be repealed. So those were the 6. When we first launched these, all the smart people in Olympia laughed and said, well, you're never going to get enough signatures to qualify them. And if you do, the Speaker of the House in Olympia there, a gal named Lori Jenkins out of Tacoma, will never pass them through the legislature. They'll be DOA, and then they'll have to go to the people. Well, in order to get an initiative qualified in the state, you need to collect about 340,000 signatures of registered Washington voters. We collected almost 500,000 on each of the 6 initiatives. So they qualify. That was in December of 2023. That was right at the end of the year, 2023. So these 6 went to the legislature as bills. And then if they weren't passed by the legislature into law, they then go to the people November of 2024 in the general election this November, and the people get to vote on them. So initially, the Speaker of the House in Olympia he said, we'll never, they're ridiculous Republican-backed things, we'll never give them a hearing. And then the Democrats in Olympia saw the polling numbers on these 6 initiatives, and they were astronomical. The support for the initiatives was like 88%. It varied a little bit for each of the 6 of them, but very high support. And it was bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, all 56 genders, all ethnic and racial groups. Every way you break it down, the support for the initiatives was very strong. You know, even among some groups, the low end might have been 60%, but generally it was up around 70, 80%. So once the sort of establishment people in Olympia saw that, they got scared. They realized if these show up on the November 24 ballot, all these people are going to be motivated and inspired to vote. We're going to lose a bunch of legislative seats here. So they decided to split the baby. They decided to allow 3 of the initiatives to get votes at the legislative level and then push 3 others off to the November 24 election. If you've actually read the Bible, splitting the baby is actually a bad plan. The point of the story in the Bible is that's not something you want to do. They did it anyway. So they passed 3 of them into law, and the interesting thing is with an initiative to the legislature, when they pass through the legislature into law, the Constitution says the governor has no role. We don't need the governor's signature because the initiative started with the people. We don't need the governor's signature, and the governor can't veto them. So it was glorious to watch this outgoing governor, exactly. It was glorious to watch this outgoing governor, pontificate and shake his fist and make all these public statements, but he had no role in the initiatives. They passed the legislature on very strong bipartisan votes, frankly, and that was kind of glorious too. It was like a revival meeting. I mean, all these legislators who just weeks before had been saying, all cops are bastards and we don't like the police is inherently racist and empty the jails, all this kind of rhetoric. They were all suddenly, we love the police. We want the police to chase bad guys. We've always been there. And so we got very good bipartisan votes because of the political reality of how popular the initiatives were. So the police pursuits passed into law, the Parents' Bill of Rights passed into law, and the no state income tax. Those are the 3 that passed into law during the session. They don't go to the people now because they're already law, and they don't need a vote of the people. They started with people. The other 3, repeal the cap and trade, repeal the capital gains, and opt out of long-term care. Those are gonna be on your ballot this November. And they are the first thing. They're the top of the ballot, literally. When you get your ballot for the general election this November, they'll be right there. And of course, we would like you to vote yes on all 3. The tagline we're using is vote yes, pay less. And it's true. But beyond just the law of these initiatives.
Is that how all of them are listed? Sometimes it's very confusing. Like you vote no for yes and yes for no.
That's on referenda. That's on referenda that overturn existing law. These are initiatives. So the logic of it is more straightforward. Just vote yes. Vote yes to do what the initiative says, which is repeal other taxes. Repeal taxes we want to get rid of. The logic of these is much more straightforward. You're talking about referenda, which are designed to overturn a specific law, and they happen more quickly after a law is passed. And that's where you get into kind of the triple reverse logic. These are more straightforward. But beyond just the initiatives as law themselves, they had a great effect on the whole legislative session. Because the majority Democrats who are used to just running everything, running the narrative, always being in charge, they had to be on defense. They had to figure out how to respond to our initiatives. And it was very good, and my colleagues will talk more about this. It allowed us to operate in kind of a unified group, and they were were divided. They were split. They didn't know what to do about the initiatives. And they had to spend, every time they did a press conference, someone would say, well, what are you going to do about the initiatives? And they were under pressure the whole session, which allowed us to play a little more offense instead of the defense that we usually play, because we've been in the minority for a long time. I mean, we're really good at playing defense. That's kind of what we do. The other guys, they're no good at playing defense. They don't know what to do when they've got to actually defend something. And it showed. They did a pretty bad job. In the midst of all this, you may have read in the papers during the session, some of these kind of eccentric people did one of these lawsuits to try to get Donald Trump taken off the presidential primary ballot. There have been a number of them all around the country. It's really corkscrew logic. It's this bizarre reading of the 14th Amendment to the US Constitution is their legal theory. And you get people like, you know who Rachel Maddow is? She gets on TV and she talks about how this is a good legal theory. And, you know, she's not a lawyer. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she gets all these left-wing people all twisted up about it. Well, a few of them sued here to get Trump taken off the presidential primary ballot. In some states where it happened, the party, not the Washington, the whatever state Republican Party, was very skittish. They're like, well, we don't want to get involved in that. We don't want to look like we're defending Trump, whatever. I thought it was really important that we, the Washington State Republican Party, fight this. We defend Trump. And it wasn't even really defending Trump. It's defending the Constitution. Their theory was kind of garbage. And so we fought it in court. First it was in Kitsap County, and then they kicked it over to Thurston County, Olympia, because they always like, the left always likes these controversial cases to go to Thurston County, because they got a bunch of very left-wing judges there, and they can get the right outcome. Well, so we got one of their left-wing judges, not the worst, she's middle left-wing, and so we made our arguments, and the other guys made this kind of crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy theory argument about Rachel Maddow and insurrection and January 6th. And we're like, no, here's what the Constitution actually says. And in order for any of this to attach, a person has to be convicted of a crime, which hasn't happened here. In America, we have due process of law. That's what we're defending. And the left-wing judge was like, yeah, you're right. You guys are right. The Republicans win. Trump stays on the ballot. And what was even better was, in this you may have read too, the US Supreme Court ruled on a similar case out of Colorado, like a month after our ruling here. And it was I think it was Clarence Thomas actually wrote the opinion. And they cribbed some of the language from the woman liberal judge in Thurston County, Washington, which I was very encouraged by. That meant our decision actually influenced the US Supreme Court's thinking, which was great to see. So we've been building some winning momentum, getting to the point of my story. And we're gonna continue to do that through the rest of this year, and we'll talk about this in your questions next, but I want to give my colleagues a chance. They've been sitting here very patiently waiting. And we'll just go in order. First up is Suzanne Schmidt, who represents the 4th District in Olympia. And Suzanne, tell everybody what you do, but you work a lot on the Labor Committee in the House, and that's some tough sledding. Suzanne.
Thank you. So I am the ranking member. So in the minority party, we're ranking members. In the majority party, they're the chairs. But I'm the ranking member on labor. So I deal a lot with labor and workplace issues, with safety, workers' comp, unemployment. I was very instrumental in negotiating the unemployment for striking workers. We actually got that down to 4 weeks. It was killed in the Senate, but I was also, once it passed in the House, working with lobbyists that were working in the Senate to get that killed basically in the Senate. And the reason for that was part of the scenarios so maybe I should go back and say there was a bill that passed the House this year, did die in the Senate, but what it was to provide unemployment insurance for striking workers. So if a union went on strike and their workers were on strike, that they would actually be able to collect unemployment. First of all, there's only 2 states in the United States that's law. That's New Jersey and New York. California passed it last legislative year, and Governor Newsom vetoed it. So there you go. He vetoed it. And the reason for it is because if we would have went with that, if that would have passed, or if it went through, what it does is it makes our unemployment trust fund very vulnerable, and it could actually make it insolvent. And if it goes insolvent, it's a big deal. It's a big deal federally, it's a big deal statewide, and of course all small businesses, well, all businesses will be directly affected by that. So that was something that I worked really hard on, but that's the committee that I probably, just because I am the ranking member, that I spend the most time negotiating bills and trying to get amendments hung on those. And like Jim said, that's what I feel like, my job is to play defense. I did, just to stop bad bills. And we stop bad bills no matter, however we can do that, whether it's, putting some amendments on it, whether it's, speaking all night long, which we do a lot, whatever we need to do to stop those bills, but that's what we're doing, is playing defense. And that's because we are in the minority. So, I'd love to see the day when we're in the majority and we're introducing bills and policies. I mean, we all have introduced certain bills and policies, but it's more difficult for us to get those policies passed because we're in the minority. So we have to get a hearing for the bill. We have to get some bipartisan support so that we can actually get it voted out of committee. Anyway, I won't talk too much more about that, but those are the things, like I said, I spend most of my time, or a lot of my time, on the labor committee, and then also negotiating with stakeholders on bills that are going through labor committee. I'm also on the transportation committee. I'm on that with Representative Voles and Rep. Walsh. And that's, we did work really hard on making sure, this was last session, and making sure that the North-South Freeway stayed in the budget. And it is funded, and excuse me? Yes. But there's phases going through, so there's going to be some money for that. But one thing I wanted, just because that came up, I want to talk about that with the initiatives. One of the initiatives that we're trying to pass, and that's going to be on the ballot, is to repeal the cap and trade. So the cap and trade is a penalty for using fossil fuel. So it's not really a tax, it's a penalty for using fossil fuel, but it shows up as a tax on the price of gas. But what they use that money for, that penalty for the cap and trade, that funds the CCA, so that's the Climate Control Act. And so when we get to, as this comes out as a ballot issue, what you're going to hear the opposition say is, if we repeal that, then we're not going to be able to fund the North-South Freeway. I've already heard people on the opposition say that. That's not true, because the North-South Freeway is a transportation budget. It is not a CCA budget item. They have 2 separate ways of being paid for. So that's some of the, I know that's gonna come out because we've already heard it. So they're gonna say, if you repeal this, if you vote for that initiative on the ballot, we're not gonna finish the freeway. That's not true. It's 2 different buckets of money. Not going to happen. The other thing that I've heard him saying too, that is that if we repeal that all these CCAs. So right now, if you have to convert or retrofit your building or your house, your business, you need to convert it to electric rather than gas. That they're going to use the CCA money to fund those conversions and help people with grant money. And so that's another thing, is they'll say if we repeal that, then nobody's going to have any money to convert back to electric. So I mean, there's lots of fear mongering already going on, but I guess that was something that I wanted to mention. And then I'm also on the workforce, or the post-secondary education and workforce development. So that's another big thing that I work on, is workforce development, and trying to make it easier to get trades and licensing and things like that in the state of Washington. Hopefully backtrack on some of the regulations that we have in place now. So I probably spent way more time than I was supposed to. So thank you.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, she wanted to bring up this scheme to get rid of natural gas, right? And they're trying to link that with the Climate Commitment Act and the cap and trade. Well, I've got a better solution. Let's repeal the Climate Commitment Act and cap and trade, and also repeal their natural gas ban. And then we can just use natural gas if we want to. There are a couple of initiatives already in the beginning of the process for repealing that natural gas ban. Next up, my colleague is Joe Schmick, who is from a little bit south of here. South is right?
But I come all the way to the top of the South Hill.
No, there you go. So closer. Hey, Joe is the ranking member on the healthcare committee, which is obviously a big deal in Olympia. And, you know, he's been there quite a while, as long as before I was there. And is a good man. We always look to Joe for a reason to take when the rest of us are freaking out about some bad bill or proposal. Joe.
Well, thank you, everybody. First of all, yes, I have been in the legislature a long time, and I am honored to represent the voters of the 9th District that keep sending me back. I've earned their trust, and that's something I don't take lightly. My wife is here tonight, Kim. She allows me to do this, and I mean that with all sincerity, and I thank her for doing that. I wanted to talk a little bit, another thing about your district. You know Craig Dublonsky?
Yes.
Craig Dublonsky runs a mental health counseling, chemical dependency counseling, and housing. And you know what? He's making it work. People are getting better. And the reason why I bring this up is that as I read in the papers here, there's some challenges here in Spokane. And I had a bill that kind of followed this pattern. And I brought it to the legislature and to Olympia, and it got Olympia-tized, is what I call it. Diluted to a point where it didn't work. And I'm going to go back, and we're going to write another bill, because here is a program that's working. He has figured it out in Hoquiam and Aberdeen. We have problems with drugs throughout the whole state, and if you don't think we do, especially in the small communities, we do, and it's bad. And we've got to stem the tide. And the reason why I bring this up, all of my colleagues up here in the House Republicans, which I'm glad to be a part of, we are looking for solutions to make your life and your community and the people that we need to help to make their lives better. I am glad and proud to be a part of that, and I'm very thankful, but I just wanted to share with you, there are ideas out there, and we can make it work. And we're going to make it work to make the lives of the folks that need their help, and to also make our community safer. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Jim.
Joe? Yeah, the guy that Joe talked about runs a program out on the coast that is they do give some housing to people who are recovering. They're trying to get out of addiction. They take a soft touch to it, but it is not low barrier housing. You got to commit to a program. You've got to commit to getting sober. Now, they understand people fall off, and they allow for that. But you have to commit to getting better in order to get the benefits in the program. And there's a sense of self-agency. You know, I'm going to get better, and so I'm going to make my life go in a better way that I think is critical. Some programs don't do that, and I think that's why Craig's program works, is it holds people accountable just to themselves. They've got to be accountable to themselves about getting better, and it works pretty well. Next up, Leonard Christian, who is, well, he was there in the legislature for a while, and he came back recently, and Leonard, take it away.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. So I'm Leonard Christian, and I'm from the fabulous 4th District, and Suzanne and I are mates. We enjoy working together in the House. I just wanted to touch a few things. I'm the assistant ranking member on state government, and so one of the bad bills that we had this year was going to let felons vote while they're in jail, to give them their rights back. But once again, the Democrats didn't quite think this through. So if you're in jail and, you know, what's the requirement to run for office, by the way? You're a registered voter living in the district. So this would allow registered felons in prison, someone maybe Gary Ridgway, to run for office. I mean, it was a horrible bill. The neat thing is that folks like you got a hold of it when it was kind of announced, our newsletters, things like that. You started calling in. And I got to tell you, that made a difference. We started getting a lot of phone calls in the House and emails, and then all of a sudden the Democrats started getting a lot of emails and phone calls, and they started thinking, well, wait a minute, we didn't think this thing through, and luckily that died, along with a lot of other really bad bills. So, and then something happened this year that hadn't happened in any time I've ever known of. We got to understand, we're in the minority, and we have 40 members, they have 58, so they got a very clear majority. It wasn't like we're 1 or 2 votes away, folks. They got the votes. If they want something through, they're going to get it through. Well, they brought a bill up in a cutoff, and we call it a cutoff bill. And usually it's kind of their worst bill, and they just know they got the votes. And it's kind of like, how much damage are we going to have to do to get it through? But we're going to get it through because we can keep going, 24 hours, it doesn't matter. Well, Jim kind of had a foresight on this, and we had 30 amendments on this bad bill, I think it was. Thank you, Jim. Brilliant strategy. So what that did is they limit our talking times because they want to try and just shove these things through as quick as they can. But with 30 amendments times 40 people times about 3 minutes each person, guess what? They're going to have to earn this. And so they're trying to convince us to remove a lot of the amendments, or please only have one talker on each amendment. We go, oh, no, you guys go ahead and go order breakfast, because this is an all-night bill for us. This bill will greatly restrict hospitals, close hospitals in rural areas, take down dialysis clinics. I mean, it basically was designed to give health care over to the AG. And it was all to make sure that there would be enough abortion services, trans services, and end-of-life services in the rural communities. And so this was a really bad bill. And so they weren't getting anywhere with us. And in fact, I think we upped our game and we said, oh no, we're going to have voice roll calls in the House. We're not going to let you just push that button and go ding and push a button. No, we want everyone to come in here and actually have their name called. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, you're going to have to earn this. If you really want to close rural hospitals, it's going to hurt. And so about 9 o'clock, they started peeling members of this. The Democrats started leaving the Capitol building. They wanted to go home. It's Friday night. They wanted to go home for the weekend and be with their family. Next thing you know, they come out and call us into order and adjourn, and we never had to say a word, and the bill died. So, pretty much. So sometimes the underdogs do win. I just want to leave you guys with a little hope. So I have a sister-in-law that lives in Olympia. She graduated Evergreen College over there. Folks, if that doesn't tell you, it doesn't get much more liberal than my sister-in-law. And in fact, she would drive over and visit us here in Spokane and have all of the Democrat stickers all over, and I'm like, guys, you've got to park that across the street. Sorry, you can't be in my driveway with that car. My neighbor's a Democrat. Go over there, he loves you. So anyway, when Trump was elected, she quit talking to us. She told my wife and I that Trump was elected because of our actions. We tried to tell her that Washington State went Democrat, went for Clinton. She was not getting that. It didn't make any sense to her, so she didn't talk to us. She hasn't talked to us for 5 years. Well, no loss to me. My wife had a little problem with it, but no loss to me, I'll get be honest with you. But here's the thing. So this last session, we actually started going out to dinner, talking a little bit more. I think she's finally getting it. And we're sitting on her porch one evening this last session. And she said, you know what, Leonard? She goes, I think I'm finally getting a little bit what's going on. I'm tired of my car being broken into. I'm tired of the homeless people here in Olympia. I'm tired of how much gas it's costing me. I just went to the grocery store. I think this is the first year I'm going to vote Republican. So I just want to give you guys, why am I hopeful? If she's willing to see that, I'm hopeful that this year we can make a difference. Thank you for coming tonight.
Well done. I like that story. Yeah, a lot of people are saying things like that. Like they'll say to me, well, I'm not a Republican, but I tend to agree with you guys more than I ever have, so I'll vote Republican this time. And that's fine. That's all we want. All we want are their votes. Next up, is Jenny Graham from the 6th Congressional, not yet, 6th Legislative District. And Jenny is a firebrand. You know her. She is strong-willed and a real bulldog when it comes to looking out for victims' rights in our legal system. Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight, and I am excited to be here with such good colleagues and the hard work that we've put in. With Jim talking about public safety really being it's my brand, it's my wheelhouse, it's my passion, my heart, and it's my passion and heart for you. Because when we live in a state where we're #1 in the nation for people dying of drug overdoses, yes, we are. Unfortunately, that's not a title I'm proud of. Murder's high, you have violent crime that's high, and what we're sadly seeing is when this happens to you, when it happens to somebody that you love or you care about, you have no voice, you have no rights, and you have no help. That's why I fight. I fight for balance. And I truly do believe that if we have some individuals that make bad choices, we should have accountability. If they're willing to hold up their end of the bargain and do the things that they need to do and get out and not continue to create more victims, I'm more than happy to help them. I will be a cheerleader. We want them to succeed. It's the can'ts and the won'ts that continue to hurt and to kill and to not be worried about the consequences and feel they have the right to do it again and again and again, in which I am stepping in to be their worst nightmare. And I'm telling you, I give it 100%. So along with that, when we're talking about the substance abuse issues, the crime issues, one of the things that I was able to work on was a bill that didn't pass into law yet. Who knows, it might become a people's initiative, you never know. This one has to do with the homeless industrial complex, because you work hard for your money, and I know there's a lot of you out there that want to help people get their lives back again. We certainly do. We need to make sure, though, that we're getting something for that, because the harm reduction and the housing first isn't working. What is going to give it a chance, though, I think, to do better is the bill that I put forward that says, first of all, there are people that are incarcerated, that are getting out, that are starting nonprofits, and a lot of these nonprofits are not, the auditing isn't there the way that it should be. So where is this money going? And that's what the bill said, was who is getting the money? How much money are they getting? What's their business plan? Because if you open a business, you have to have a business plan if you're going to get any money from the bank. And I think that's fair. The other thing is, where's the receipts? You say you're going to spend this money here. Where's the receipts showing you did? How much money is going towards your overhead and your salaries versus how much money is going to help the homeless, which I thought was important. And this bill actually had some teeth to it. It said that you are going to report these things to the auditor, the state auditor, and if you don't, you are no longer eligible for grants until you become compliant. The other part is if you were caught mismanaging funds or committing fraud, you're no longer eligible for those grants, because we need people in there that are serious about helping people get their lives back again. We want to be able to help the people that are struggling. Nobody wants to see that. And I've talked about this before, if we were walking down the street and we saw somebody that had a knife and they were stabbing themselves, I don't think there's very many of us that would just walk by. And yet when we're talking about the substance abuse issues, it's slow suicide. It's slow suicide. It's what I had a chance to talk to a mom locally, And she found her son stiff from fentanyl. And I heard the 911 call, and it resonated me. I have goosebumps right now listening to that mother's cry. And there was a very powerful video in which it was to the sound of silence, the music, the sound of the song, The Sound of Silence, and it was listing all of the children, the babies that are dead in Washington State because there was a bill passed that we put parental rights as far as somebody that's having substance abuse issues over protecting these poor innocent babies. And that's why we have so many babies that are dying. Yes, we need to help these parents, but you don't sacrifice the babies by saying, you know, you can be a parent and do drugs. Hey, mom does it at night, dad does it during the day. They're not going to be cleaning up after this. And these poor babies are getting into these drugs. So you are going to see a movement, be watching for it. It's one old bomb. And there are a lot of us that are stepping up to say, we are tired of seeing our family members die. We are tired of seeing the cartels and the gangs and the traffickers and the criminals that are the ones that are in charge. They're preying on our families for profit. And I want to make it very uncomfortable for them to do that in Washington State. We're going to need your help to make that happen. This is on all of us. One of the other things that I'm going to wrap up with, there's certainly a lot of other things I could talk about, but I want to also make it very clear when you think about Olympia and you think about the people that you elect to go and represent you. What's happening in Olympia right now is you have two different lines of thought. You have those of us that recognize that those seats that we're sitting in don't belong to us. Those seats belong to you, to the people that sent us there, to bring your hopes, wants, wishes, needs, and most importantly, your voice. That when we work on these things, we're supposed to be working with you for the outcomes that you want. Now, on the House floor, that we did have the other side of the coin, so to speak. Their feeling is that you elect them to go there and make decisions for you. That's where you're seeing this tug of war that's going on. So when you're talking with your family and you're talking with your friends and you're talking, you know, with children, I want you to start thinking about what type of representation do you want in Olympia? What type of representation do you want for your city council? Do you want people that are saying it's our job to work with you on these solutions and these problems? Or are you more inclined to say, well, I elected you to make these decisions for me, and I'm going to go with whatever it is you tell me? And if that's one of the things that I've talked with one of my nephews about. You didn't want to be involved in politics. Well, when you sit back and you let Joe do the work, Joe's going to get what Joe wants, and he's going to make Paul pay for it. We need you to be involved. We need you calling us, sending us emails, asking us questions. You are not imposing. We're there to help you. We're there to work for you. But the most important part is we have to do this together. So I'm absolutely grateful that you're here tonight, because that's a huge part of it. You're here. We're talking about these things. We'll be working on them together. And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you.
That's perfect. Jenny's absolutely right. There are politicians who think they're leaders, and there are politicians who know that they're servants. And we have too many who fancy themselves leaders in Olympia, not enough servants. Our anchor man tonight from the legislature is my great friend Mike Voles, also from the 6th, who is probably always connected with me because of one silly bill that we did when we were both freshmen about wrestling. You can imagine why. That we got the bill passed, but people are still laughing at us years later about sounding like Hulk Hogan and Dusty Rhodes when we were doing the floor speeches. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Michael, 6th District. Yeah, Jim and I were freshmen together. We did this speech. You try to find it somewhere. It's worth revisiting. We did this old "Thank you, Madam Speaker" WWF thing going on, on the floor.
The bill passed.
The bill passed. The funny thing is, the bill passed. And the guy who was running it was a Democrat. He ran it for like 6 years, something like that. And I didn't like the guy so too much. He was kind of annoying. And so right afterwards, he comes over for a picture. And there's a picture of Jim and I with him doing wrestling. Wrestling. He was a little guy. He was kind of little small guy between Jim and I. And I turned to him and I said, "Hey, how's it feel to have two freshman Republicans? How's it feel that it takes two freshman Republicans to get your bill out of the House finally?" That was the last time he talked to me, and I was happy. I was happy about that. So anyway, so I'm ranking member on the Innovation, Community, Economic Development, and Veterans Committee, which I call the committee with the longest name, and we get an interesting array of stuff through. The big focus for me is, of course, on the economic development and the veterans piece. I'm a veteran myself. So I think that's an important piece. We do a lot of important work there. I'm also on the Consumer Protection and Business Committee and on the Transportation Committee. And for a couple of years, I was assistant ranking on the Transpo Committee. So first of all, anybody who tells you, and there's some threats, veiled or otherwise, by some of our local politicians who should be looking out for Spokane, who say if the CCA, the Climate Commitment Act, goes down, the North-South Freeway is in danger. That is a lie. That is absolute lie. They are separate pots of money. What they're saying is they're going to cancel, the threat is, if you vote for this thing to repeal the Climate Commitment Act, they're going to take money from that and fund their wishes are fishes and unicorn powered buses and all that stuff bills, rather than these core transportation thing that we all voted on, we all worked on, and we all supported. So keep that in mind. Anybody tells you that those projects go away, the North-South corridor is in jeopardy, that is a lie. That is false. Do not believe them and tell them that. Correct them. If they're friends, tell them, no, that's not true. If they're an elected official, write them an email, call them out, say, no, that is not true. You are spreading misinformation, because that is absolutely not true. So keep that in mind. The initiatives, I think, are a really, really big deal. And we can address a lot of woes in there. The income tax one, it was funny, the income tax and the education one, they said, well, we don't need this. We don't need this. Yes, we do. Then why were you so afraid of it? Why did they wait till the end of session? We do need it. And Jim's 100% right. They stuck their fingers in the air, found out which way the wind was blowing, and said, boy, we better pass these out or else we're going to get torched. Well, hold them accountable. Still hold them accountable for what they did, because it shouldn't require initiative to give parental rights in schools. That one's incredibly troubling. And I'm glad Jim mentioned the 36 school district seats in Meade, because I linked up with Commissioner Kearns here. We helped out we had a slate of 3 of them running in Meade. They were in the minority 3-2, and they ended up flipping 2 seats, so it's a 4-1 majority, because of a lot of hard work. And quite frankly, school board races usually are snoozers. You don't hardly know anything about it, but these things, the community was engaged. They would have a lot of people showing up at their events. They were out doorbelling. They had lots of volunteers. I did a little bit of doorbelling, did some sign waving for them, and there was always a lot of people. I'm like, this is a school board race? This is fantastic. So they won, and one of the guys they beat was long-term, he was there forever, I think. I don't know how long, but forever and ever. And he did mini filing. So mini filing is, I don't think I have to worry about that. I plan on raising $5,000 or less. You don't have to do all the disclosure reports. And then at the very end, he switched to full reporting. And all of a sudden I saw signs popping up, and I'm like, dude, it's too late, you're done. You're not gonna go on your name and your laurels. So he lost, we flipped that, which is fantastic, because what the state has done over the years, I spent 4 years on the K-12 Ed Committee, is a lot of erosion of local control. And local control Local control at the foundational level is parental control. And everything above that is government in some form or another. The school board's a form of government, the county commissioners, the city. At the end of the day, it is the parents that need to be in charge of their kids' lives and their kids' decisions and their education system, period. So on some of the finance stuff, the income tax thing, I dropped a caucus bill. Everybody in the Republican caucus signed it. We did legislation just in case to make it clear that income tax was a big no-no. But I think it was last session. They were last session. Anyway, they were messing around with stuff. So Jim and I primed it. Jim was my co-sponsor, so as a team, he had a full plate. So I said, I'll take it. I'll prime it. I came to him with this idea. It's everything. Every tax increase automatically becomes an automatic referendum to the people, right? So the second they pass it out, it goes on the ballot, and the people say yay or nay. Enough with these advisory votes that have people say, well, we vote no. There's no teeth. This basically took the advisory vote, put it on steroids, and made it go back through the legislative process. They can vote no, they can do whatever, but it puts them on the record again. I think we went as far as saying it had to be considered before any other policy was considered in the House of Origin. So that might be revisited this next session. We might resurrect that one. The other one that they kept messing around with and chasing after was they wanted to get rid of the odd year election. So they wanted to move everything to an even year election. So again, working with Jim, I primed it. Jim was my second on it, is we came up with one that said, fine, you want to do that, we'll get rid of every other session for the legislature. Most people don't know, in 1978, we had one odd year 60-day session. And in 1978, a constitutional amendment, meaning the people granted the legislative trust and authority to have more than that. They amended the Constitution. They gave us a 105-day in the odd year and a 60-day session in an even year. This thing would have reversed that and sent it back. I technically couldn't abolish it, so I turned the 60-day session into a one-day session and the 105-day into a 60-day session. So I mean, if their intent is to strip away the voice of the people, which they continually go after, then we need to punch back with some stuff. So some of these things might be coming back. We might be resurrecting those. On the drug issue, we get it a little bit extra because of our proximity to Idaho. Because I don't know if you know this about Idaho, they don't play games. They do not play games at all when it comes to drug use, when it comes to drug crimes, when it comes to property crimes. So guess what? They come to Spokane. They come to Joe's community and district along that Idaho border. They come over, commit our crimes. And I checked with former Chief Meidel and former Sheriff Ozzie Knezovich and current Sheriff John Knowles on that. But yes, we get a lot of people from Idaho. It's not make-believe. They come commit crimes. They get better benefits. They get all sorts of free stuff, and they come commit crimes because they're not held accountable in Washington State. So these are some of the issues that we're dealing with, and we'll continue to work on and fight for. So thank you for having me. This is a good event. I really appreciate it. Moving on.